Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, ET-NA's special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. On the show today, I'm being joined by two experts to run us through all the calls, queries and social media queries that we're getting in from our viewers. I have with me R.K. Bakshi. He's the Senior Advisor, Centrum. He's also the ex-ED of the Bank of Baroda. And we also have Hemendra Hazari in the studio with us tonight. He's an independent banking expert. Gentlemen, as always, pleasure having the two of you with us tonight. That then is what our expert panel is looking like. Let's start the show right away. The first query is a call coming in from our viewer Hari O Mahajan. Go ahead, Mr. Mahajan.
It is a very good thing that startup has been started, but the new generation who is interested to start up the business, new business, it is very difficult for them how they can get inquired and how can they get the things done. And so helpline number and everything is required for it. It is very important because all the things are going on, but the advertisements are wonderful and amazing, but the things are not happening properly.
Okay, so let me just try and rephrase that question then for the two of you. What I understand is saying, there are several schemes that are available and we get this feedback a lot from our viewers in terms of how do we know, where to find that particular scheme, the details of that. And he's specifically also saying a helpline number, for example. But that's just a very specific question. In terms of a broader question, and maybe I could start with you, Hemendra, in terms of, keeping oneself abreast, whether it's financial education or whether it's education related to different schemes, what advice would you have for our viewers?
See, this government has been extremely digital savvy. So if you go to the Startup India website, you see all the contact numbers are given there, email IDs are given, a toll-free number is given. And I think from Monday to Friday during business hours, anyone can call up and ask questions. So there is information available, and the government really has been quite tech savvy in that they have put it out on the website. So I think if you want to know some more schemes and further details, you can always go to that website. And if you need any further clarifications, one can always contact through the email ID or through phone calls.
Would you want to add to that?
Beyond the specifics of the schemes and some idea, he will have to find mentors. A lot of private equity people who provide private equity, and there are mentors in the public space also who will, you may perhaps for a real startup you may need a mentor. Towards your broader question and about where do you get the financial advice and where to approach for anybody needing that, there are banks. Now every bank has been, for example, since the government launched the Mudra scheme, every bank has been asked, every branch should have a Mudra officer, a designated Mudra officer who will advise anybody approaching on the Mudra scheme and what the bank can do. Then there are as I said, under the startup, there is a smaller subset, which I can call it subset, is the Stand Up India, which also the Government of India launched, in which loans between 10 lakh and 1 crore will be given to SC, ST or women entrepreneurs from various banks. For that, there is a portal, and then SIDBI and NABARD have been made as the hand-holding agencies, which will advise whether you need skilling, whether you need subsidy, whether you need margin funding, supporting you in preparing the project report, supporting you in taking the loan from the banks. So these agencies for that particular specific product are there. Other than that, for smaller projects like Mudra loans and all, the banks also provide, SIDBI provides. There are a number of agencies which provide that type of guidance. But if you really have a big startup, that means you have got an innovative idea which is technology and IPR driven, and you want to work it on from the portal, like Hemendra said, you can call them up, mail them, get the information about the facilities available. But if you really want to grow your idea and you want hand holding, you need a mentor, you may as it is be approaching some private equity and things like that.
All right, I hope that answers your question, Mr. Mahajan. Let's take in our second query. This is something that's come to us on social media, and we'll tell you in just a bit how you can reach us on social media. But this query is from Mavin Bhargava, who says vision and long-term planning is important, but is short-term planning and efficiently really taking care of your business today are not equally important in the MSME business. While we do hear about 5-year plans, 10-year plans, how critical is it also to have short-term plans, whether it's a 6-month plan or 1-year plan?
See, all planning is extremely important, and I think very rightly so. You cannot ignore short-term planning because in any business enterprise, you must know what your daily cash flows are, what type of borrowing limits you have, are you within those borrowing limits, are your debtors paying on time, are your inventories being liquidated on time. So, you must have a firm grip on the short-term developments, because if you do not have a grip on your short-term developments, there is no way you can come out with a viable long-term plan. So, both have to be intermingled and both have to be looked upon simultaneously, because one without the other will not take your business very far.
Yeah, very correctly said. So, long term plan is for the to give effect to your vision, where you want to reach 5 years hence, and in that you may have to factor in a lot of things, and so you have to review every year, and it should be dynamically moving 5-year plan. So, every year you prove where you have traversed. But as Hemendra rightly said, the long term plan ultimately is built up by smaller steps that you take every day. If you are not able, for example, able to meet your deliveries on time, if you are not able to meet your cash flows requirements and payments in time, which are or your quality issues on a day-to-day basis, then you will not survive to see that long-term vision fructifying, and therefore short-term planning is very, very important.
All right, Mr. Bhargava, I hope that answers your query. A mixture of both short-term as well as long-term is what you need to keep in mind. Let's take in our next query. This is coming in from Manish Mengi. He says his query is on BIS. There are 30 items to be covered under BIS certification. He says, can the shipper ship shipments of the same model or the product if it is BIS approved to other importers? Because he understands that the certificate is given to the shipping factory, not the importer or the unit, and he wants more clarity on that. Let me come to you, Mr. Bakshi.
Unfortunately, neither of us are experts in this area, but what we know from our experience and common understanding and little bit understanding about BIS is that products in a particular factory or production unit are approved for a particular manufacturer. For example, a fan or an electric motor or other products. So, that product carries that BIS certification. Now, you may sell it to anybody. It is not that a particular shipment is BIS certified to be made to a particular buyer, and therefore, I think that should take care. If their factory and BIS has got a elaborate process, they inspect the factory, they put the product through various testings, or they may send it to some laboratory for testing, which takes about 4 to 6 month process, and after that you have to keep on getting this standard ISI mark reviewed periodically, but then you can sell to anybody.
Fair enough. Let me bring in the next query. It's coming in from Mukesh Kaura, and he's calling in with his query. Go ahead, Mukesh.
Fabricate and distribute engineered systems for liquid and gas filtration and separation. We are in project business, that is, we make tailor-made systems for the industry. The query is not in particular to my company, but for the industry at large. Terms and conditions which are offered by the public sector companies or the private corporates are in their favor. In spite of this, they do not honor their terms as there is no accountability at their end.
Okay. All right, Mukesh, we've in fact discussed this quite a bit on the show in the past in the sense of how to protect the interest of MSMEs when they are dealing with large companies, because the large companies, and that's the feedback we're getting, can arm twist to a large extent. Let me start with you, Mr. Bakshi.
So, there are two sides to it. One is the legal side, the other is the practical side. So, legal side is that since the MSMED Act was put into operation in 2006, there is a specific provision which makes it incumbent on large companies to specifically pay the dues of MSMEs within not the medium industries up to the small industries within a particular period of 45 days. They have to have an agreement with this thing within how many days they will be paying, but it should not be more than 45 days. And if it is delayed by beyond 45 days, then they have to pay an interest which is 3 times the bank rate. So, which becomes quite a punitive measure. But the practical side is no SSI who is dependent on orders on the large company is able to enforce that and ask for that. It will depend only on their relationship building with the larger company and putting that in front of them, but they can take care of their fund flows by getting those dues discounted either by factors or by banks or by SIDBI. There are elaborate and very good schemes available, particularly if they are supplying to reputed manufacturers, they can get the discounting at very economical rates.
One thing is that your product has to be critical to the large company, because if your product is critical or your service is critical, then he'll ensure that you get your payment on time. Now, if your product is not critical, which I think is the case of many SMEs, there's very little one can do really. And one point which is you can do factoring, but in India factoring is done with recourse, and it is done at the rates may not be that competitive for the SMEs to go with. So there are measures there, but to me they are not very practical for SMEs, and somehow they have to live with this scenario, unfortunately.
I just want to extend that question and ask, do banks take a favorable view of companies which are stuck in such a situation?
So banks, as I said, for example, okay, let me take it further. Most of the banks have got a scheme which is known as channel finance scheme, or which is a vendor financing and which is also supplier financing. So if these companies, they get in touch with their buyer and say, okay, you are whatever payment time you are taking, that's longer, but do you have a channel finance arrangement with any bank? For example, because those facilities are put in place for the larger company, for example, the Bata India or an ONGC or somebody which are bigger companies, or Hindustan Lever. So if you are supplying to them and you ask them, you have, or a Tata Motors, you have got channel financing arrangement with anybody, and then you approach that company, because that bank where that facility is there, you will get discounting at very cheap competitive rates. Why? Because the bank is depending on the payment of that discounting from that larger company. The larger company has to make the payment to SSI, so bank is very much assured that its payment will come in place of time.
Let's take in our next query, Parthasarathy Basu. In fact, it's a call, I understand. Parthasarathy?
We manufacture industrial pollution control equipment. My question is, what is the right way of staffing for MSMEs? We pick fresher or less experienced candidate and train them, but after a short period of time, they leave. The one who remains turn out to not to be so competent.
So I don't think there are any easy answers to a query like this, that you spend big money, you train them after they've joined your company, and then you realize that they're moving on to better opportunities. What do you do about something like this?
If you wish to build a team, then you make sure at least your core team is extremely dedicated to you, and you care for them extremely well in terms of what kind of salaries you give them, what kind of perks you give them, and most importantly, what type of responsibilities you give them. Because typically you will find in all promoter driven companies, they may pay well, but they will make sure that all responsibility still rests with them, and that is a mindset which they have to, I think, move away from. Because once a person feels he's part of a team, that he has responsibilities as well, then it is one way of keeping him on for a longer time period. But it's very important for the company to identify a core team, and in that core team there should not be much turnover. While the peripheral there can be turnover, but if your core team you have high turnover, then your business is going to be in trouble.
One is, as per the Maslow's hierarchical needs, at the earlier stage of career, everybody is looking for good money or better money. So better money offers generally attract people to go out or move out. The other is the job content, which can be more challenging, more responsibility, better designation, which makes people move out. So I have seen some of the private banks, what they do, they have got 16 designations, whereas other banks would have only 7 rungs in the ladder. So you create more designations so that everybody feels that I got promoted after 2 years, so you feel. But in these companies, this thing cannot be totally taken care of, but as he rightly said, you try to give them a sense of build a core team, give them the challenging assignment, give them some hope for a better career. Whether you will like to, for example, question can be whether you will be like to be the 100th man in a big company or 1000th man in a big company, or like to be the 3rd man in a small company. So it may appeal to some people, and those should be the core questions they ask while recruiting. When recruiting, they should try to analyze the personality of the person. What is his long-term aim? Whether he wants to be heading a small company or being the number 2 in a small company, or he will like to work in a much larger company. For example, I have seen many boys now working in startups, and they have joined new, and their startups are really small, so or whatever, they are growing. So, they are at number 2 or number 3 or number 4. That is more enticing to them than being working in a 1,000 man, 2,000 man company in the country. The other thing is, if you are growing bigger and you can make them their job more sticky by offering some ESOPs, if you are in that stage. If you are a company which has the scale to come to a stage where those ESOPs will have value, then you can make the employment stickier by giving ESOPs.
Okay, let's take a very quick break at this point. When we come back, we will continue answering all of your other queries. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now, and we're taking in all of your queries. Just before we took a break, we were talking about retaining of talent, and this next query coming in is along those same lines. This is the social media query coming in from Jay Raj. He says he's the mechanical industry. He recruits employees who leave within 2 to 3 months. And says that they incur a lot of loss, and what can be done to retail employees. Jairaj, I hope you've been listening in to the views coming in from the experts. They were discussing just this before we took the break, but specific to this industry, and we do know that he works in the mechanical industry. So would the nature of the industry make the stickiness of the job different? A manufacturing job like Mr. Bakshi was talking about, the banking space that tends to typically see more sticky employees. Do you think that it could possibly be correlated as well to, say, the manufacturing industry?
You see, at the entry level in any industry, there is limited challenging work, let us face it. Because at the entry level, it is more kind of mechanical type of work which will be given to you. You will not be getting given important assignments, which is, that I think entry level employees should be fully aware of this, because very often I think they join and they expect to be involved in very large project, but no entity will really entrust them with that. So from a company's point of view, I think you just have to see whether they are well taken care of, whether they enjoy the job experience apart from, of course, the salary. But a lot of these SMEs, being SMEs, I don't think they can compete on salaries. So you just have to see that they get more responsibility, they're identified more closely with the promoter, because normally in these SMEs it will be a small run outfit. So if the promoter can spend more time with them, they can get confidence that they feel that they are learning something. I think that's one way of trying to retain them. In the end, you have to understand there's going to be some turnover of employees at that entry level.
Sure. Do you want to add to that?
The only thing that he says 2 to 3 months, which looks very small. So he has to look in as to what is happening in 2 to 3 months. See, what we were talking about, a year or 2 years, when they gain some knowledge about the industry and some experience to write on their CV to be attractive to a larger company. Why they are leaving in 2 to 3 months, then that means either the intake is not right, or the environment has to be looked in, or he should do a comparison of his packages and things with other industry players and see what is happening.
Okay. All right. Let's take in the next query, and this is a call coming in from Sunil Mardia. Go ahead, Sunil.
Hello. There is so much noise and hype around the buzzword MSME and then the government. The banks are all taking so much to help MSME grow. But the fact is that MSME units still find it very, very difficult to arrange bank funds for their basic working needs, leave alone expansion and technology upgrade. So my specific question to the panel would be, when will easy funding to MSME be a reality?
Okay, $1 million question. This, I know it can't be really generalized for the industry per se. I'm sure it's business to business. But that said, how do you answer his query?
The government, the Ministry of Micro and Small and Medium Enterprises, they have set up various schemes for MSMEs, and they have a credit link capital subsidy scheme where they operate through the nodal agencies of SIDBI and NABARD, and most of the banks come out with these schemes. So they can go for these schemes. I think the maximum loan that they're given is about 1 crore. So if you're within that 1 crore limit, you can get them, and there is a subsidy element to that as well.
To give comfort to Mr. Mardia, I can say that right now, most of the public sector banks, everybody is saying that we are focusing on what they call in different terminologies, but what they call retail, agriculture and micro and small enterprises, so RAM. So everybody is trying to move away, taking from Hemandra's point of larger NPAs in larger projects, which is the scenario today. Most of the banks are declaring that they are moving or focusing more on growing the retail, agriculture and micro and small enterprises in the next year or 2 years or 3 years. So there will be definitely larger lending to these units. The government, to further incubate it and further give it a spur, the government has come up with Mudra loans where targets have been given. Government has come with Stand Up India loan, which is for SC, ST and women, where targets have been given to the banks to lend within a time. So with the banks' focus, with the experience with them, these are the positive side. The negative side is that banks, generally SMEs, are one-man shows, and therefore they have to manage manufacturing, they have to manage marketing, they have to manage HR and everything. And in a number of cases, like we earlier also discussed, they are not in a competitive position to negotiate with their larger buyers or with the market. They are weaker players, and therefore at times delayed payments hamper their growth, and therefore banks are a little bit wary as to whether the venture will be successful in cash flows and be able to meet our repayment, because ultimately for banks within 90 days if you do not service your interest and installment, the account becomes NPA. So banks have got that problem. Therefore banks generally want security to take which a SME may have, it may not. Security are two types. One is the primary security, which is the assets which you acquire out of the loan, and the other is collateral. If you can give any other building, land, your own residence, you can give, that makes it easier for the bank to give. To take care of the problem that SMEs may not have recourse to such collaterals within their house or within their family, or they may not like to mortgage their only house that they have, the government came up with a scheme called CGT MSE, which is Credit Guarantee Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises, which is run by SIDBI, as Hemendra mentioned, and loans up to 1 crore to one SME, you do not require to give any collateral. In fact, bank cannot take a collateral from you, and they will cover it under the CGT MSE, which protects the bank's interest in case of failure of the SME loan, and the SME's interest in the sense that they can get collateral free loan.
Alright gentlemen, we've run completely out of time on this episode of Leaders of Tomorrow. Do remember that if you have any questions for our experts, you can always write in to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT, or call us on the number which is on your screen, and we'll get our experts to answer your queries. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.